My perfect sister destroyed my self-worth for years with her golden child status. I got my revenge by strategically damaging her precious trophies and awards just enough to hurt her emotionally, then used her reaction to expose her true nature to our parents. The fallout was more devastating than I ever imagined. I've been lurking on this sub for months and I finally have a story worth sharing. This happened about 5 years ago when I was 14 and my sister Emma was 16. I'm 19 now and the consequences of what I did are still rippling through my family. Some of you might think I went too far, but honestly, I regret nothing. To understand why I did what I did, you need to understand what it was like growing up as Emma's little sister. Picture this, a girl who was literally perfect at everything she touched. Not just good, perfect. She was valedictorian material from elementary school, captain of the varsity soccer team by sophomore year, played violin in the state youth orchestra, spoke fluent French and Spanish, volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend, and somehow still found time to tutor struggling kids for free. Our house looked like a shrine to Emma's achievements. The living room mantel was covered with her trophies, academic excellence awards, soccer championships, music competition prizes, community service recognition plaques. The walls were covered with her certificates, medals, and framed newspaper clippings about her latest accomplishments. Mom and Dad would beam with pride whenever anyone visited, giving them the full tour of Emma's wall of fame. And me? I was just there. The unremarkable younger daughter who served as a constant reminder of what mediocrity looked like in comparison. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a complete failure. I got decent grades, mostly B's with the occasional A or C, played JV basketball, spent most games on the bench, and had a small group of friends. But when your sister is literally perfect, decent feels like rock bottom. Every parent-teacher conference was the same. Well, she's a sweet girl, but she's no Emma. Every family dinner involved discussions of Emma's latest achievement while I pushed food around my plate in silence. The worst part wasn't even the comparisons, it was how Emma handled being the golden child. She never gloated or put me down directly. Instead, she'd do this thing where she'd offer to help me with everything. Failed a math test? Don't worry, I can tutor you. I got a 98% on that same test when I took it. Didn't make varsity? Maybe next year. I could help you practice if you want. Struggling with college applications? I'd be happy to look over your essays. I mean, I did get into Harvard early admission. She said it all with this sickeningly sweet smile, like she genuinely cared about helping her poor, struggling little sister. But I could see it in her eyes, the pity, the superiority, the satisfaction of being the perfect one. She loved being better than me, and she loved that everyone praised her for being so supportive of her less talented sister. Our parents ate it up. Emma is such a good big sister, they'd coo. She's always looking out for you. They never noticed how her help made me feel smaller and more inadequate. They never saw how I'd cry myself to sleep after another evening of Emma's achievements being celebrated while my efforts went unnoticed. The breaking point came during the spring of my freshman year. I had been working my ass off in AP biology, staying up until midnight every night, studying flashcards during lunch, forming study groups with other students. I was genuinely passionate about the subject and had dreams of maybe becoming a veterinarian someday. When report cards came out, I was so proud to see I'd earned an A in the class. It was the first time in months I'd felt genuinely good about myself academically. I practically ran home to show my parents. I burst through the front door with a huge grin, report card in hand. Mom? Dad? Look at my bio grade. But before I could even get the words out, Emma appeared in the hallway holding her own report card. Guess what? She announced. I got straight A's again. And Mrs. Henderson says I have the highest grade in AP chemistry she's seen in 5 years. Just like that, my moment was gone. Mom and Dad rushed over to congratulate Emma, examining her perfect report card with amazement. Honey, this is incredible. Dad said. We're so proud of you. I stood there holding my report card, feeling invisible. Finally, Mom noticed me. Oh, how did you do, sweetie? She asked absently, still looking at Emma's grades. I got an A in biology, I said quietly. That's nice, dear, she replied, barely glancing at my card. Emma, tell us about this chemistry achievement. And that was it. My proudest academic moment in years was dismissed in 2 seconds so they could continue fawning over Emma's latest perfection. I went to my room and cried for an hour, then ripped up my report card and threw it in the trash. That night, as I lay in bed listening to my parents downstairs bragging to my grandmother about Emma's grades over the phone, something dark and bitter crystallized in my chest. I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being the disappointment. I was tired of Emma being worshipped for her perfection while I struggled just to be noticed. I wanted to hurt her the way she had hurt me. Not physically, I wasn't violent. But I wanted her to feel small and inadequate for once in her perfect life. I wanted to take away something that made her special, just like she had unknowingly taken away my self-worth piece by piece over the years. The plan came to me gradually over the next few weeks. I started paying attention to Emma's routines, her habits, her schedule. She was incredibly organized and methodical, everything in her room had a specific place, and she followed the same patterns every day. She left for soccer practice at 6 a.m. sharp every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. She spent Sunday afternoons at the library working on college applications. She had violin lessons every Wednesday after school and never got home before 6 p.m. I also noticed how she treated her trophies and awards. They weren't just decorations to her, they were validation, proof of her worth, physical manifestations of her identity as the perfect daughter. She dusted them weekly, arranged them precisely, and I'd caught her more than once just standing in her room admiring them. They meant everything to her. And that's when I knew exactly how to hurt her. I spent 2 weeks observing and planning. I needed to be smart about this. If I got caught, I'd be grounded for life and she'd just get sympathy for being victimized by her jealous little sister. No, I had to be subtle. Strategic. The damage had to look accidental or at least ambiguous enough that I could deny it convincingly. The opportunity came on a Thursday morning in early May. Emma left for soccer practice as usual, Mom was already at work, and Dad wouldn't be up for another hour, he worked late shifts. I had the house to myself and at least 2 hours before anyone would be home. I slipped into Emma's room with a pair of small scissors and my phone. First, I took pictures of everything exactly as it was. I needed to be able to put most things back perfectly so she wouldn't immediately notice. Then I got to work. I started with the certificates on her wall. I didn't destroy them, that would be too obvious. Instead, I made tiny, precise cuts along the edges and corners. Just enough to damage them, but small enough that she might not notice right away. A little snip here, a small tear there. I cut a few letters out of some of the text, not enough to make them unreadable, but enough to be noticeable once she looked closely. The academic medals were next. I used a nail file to scratch small marks into the surfaces, careful to make them look like natural wear rather than deliberate damage. I bent a few of the ribbons slightly, creating creases that couldn't be smoothed out. But the real masterpiece was what I did to her soccer trophies. These were her most prized possessions, the physical proof of her athletic superiority. I carefully removed the small nameplate from her most valuable player trophy from the regional championship and used the scissors to make tiny cuts around the edges, making it look worn and damaged. I put it back, but slightly crooked. For her biggest trophy, a massive thing from winning the state tournament, I did something more subtle but more devastating. I carefully removed the golden soccer ball from the top of the trophy and used sandpaper to rough up one side of it, then put it back. The damage wasn't immediately obvious, but once you noticed it, you couldn't unsee it. The whole operation took about 45 minutes. I photographed everything again to make sure I could remember exactly how it all looked, then carefully arranged everything back to nearly the original positions, but with just enough small differences that she'd know someone had been in there. Then I went back to my room and waited. Emma got home from practice around 8 a.m., took a shower, and went to her room to get ready for school. I listened from my room, heart pounding. At first, nothing. Then I heard her moving around, and I could tell she was looking at something more closely. "Mom?" she called out. "Mom." I crept to the top of the stairs to listen. Mom had just gotten back from her morning run. "What's wrong, honey?" Someone was in my room. "My trophies, something's wrong with them." I heard them both go into Emma's room. My heart was racing, this was it. "What do you mean?" Mom asked. "Look at this." Emma's voice was getting higher, more distressed. "This certificate is torn. And this medal is all scratched up. And my MVP trophy, the nameplate is damaged." "Honey, are you sure?" "Maybe." "No." Emma's voice cracked. "Someone did this on purpose. Look at the cuts, they're too precise to be accidents." I heard Mom examining the damage. "Emma, sweetie, these are very small marks. Maybe they just got damaged over time?" Some of these trophies are 3 years old. MOM. Emma was crying now. I dust these every week. I take perfect care of them. Someone came in here and deliberately damaged them. Who would do such a thing? There was a long pause. I held my breath. I don't know, Emma said finally, but I could hear the suspicion in her voice. That evening at dinner, Emma brought it up again. She'd spent the whole day examining her trophies and had found every single tiny cut, scratch, and bent ribbon I'd made. 17 different items were damaged, she announced. The cuts are too uniform to be accidental. Someone deliberately sabotaged my awards. Dad looked concerned. Are you sure, Em? That seems extreme. I'm positive. Emma's eyes swept the table and landed on me. The question is who? I looked up from my plate with what I hoped was a confused expression. What are you talking about? Someone was in my room today, Emma said coldly. Someone damaged my trophies and certificates. That sucks, I said, trying to sound sympathetic. Do you think someone broke in? The front door was locked, Mom said. Nothing else in the house was disturbed. It had to be someone with access. The implication hung heavy in the air. Emma was staring at me with laser focus. I would never do something like that, I said, meeting her gaze. Why would I? They're just trophies. The phrase just trophies hit exactly the way I intended. Emma's face went white, then red. Just trophies? She exploded. Those represent years of hard work. Thousands of hours of practice and study and… Emma, Dad interrupted. Calm down. But Emma was beyond calm. She did it. She pointed at me. She's always been jealous of my achievements. I didn't do anything. I protested, letting my own voice get emotional. Why are you accusing me? I was probably asleep when it happened. You're lying. Emma shouted. Enough. Dad's voice boomed across the table. Emma, you cannot accuse your sister without proof. These accusations are serious. But, no buts. Unless you have evidence, these are just conspiracy theories. Emma looked around the table wildly. You don't believe me? We believe that your trophies were damaged, Mom said carefully. We just don't know how or by whom. Fine, Emma said, her voice turning ice cold. Fine. But I know what I know. She got up and stormed out of the dining room. A few minutes later, I heard her door slam. I felt a mixture of triumph and guilt. The plan had worked perfectly. I'd hurt her, and her reaction had made her look unstable and accusatory. But seeing her that upset also made me feel complicated things I didn't want to examine too closely. Over the next few days, Emma became obsessed with her damaged awards. She spent hours examining them, taking pictures, researching ways to repair them. She moved them all to different positions, as if changing their arrangement could somehow undo the damage. But more importantly, her perfect facade was beginning to crack. She started snapping at our parents over little things. When Dad made a joke about her being too serious about her trophies, she went off on him about how he didn't understand what hard work meant. When Mom suggested maybe it was time to focus less on past achievements and more on future goals, Emma accused her of minimizing her accomplishments. The worst part for her was that her obsession with the damaged trophies was affecting her current performance. She was distracted during soccer practice, earned her first B+ in years on a chemistry test, and had to postpone her violin recital because she hadn't been practicing. Our parents were getting concerned about Emma's state of mind. I overheard them talking in hushed voices about perfectionist anxiety and whether Emma might need to talk to a counselor about her unhealthy attachment to external validation. This was better than I had ever imagined. Not only had I successfully hurt Emma, but her reaction was actually making our parents question her perfection for the first time ever. But Emma wasn't done. She was determined to prove I was responsible, and she was smart enough to eventually figure out how to do it. 2 weeks after the trophy incident, I came home from school to find Emma waiting for me in the living room with a laptop and a smug expression. We need to talk, she said. About what? About this. She turned the laptop screen toward me. It was displaying what looked like a photo comparison, before and after shots of her room. My blood went cold. I found something interesting when I was going through old photos on my phone, Emma continued conversationally. Remember when I had to document my room for that organization challenge in my time management class? I took detailed pictures of everything, including all my trophies and awards. Pictures taken just 2 days before they were mysteriously damaged. She clicked to the next image, a side-by-side comparison of one of her certificates. See this Academic Excellence Award? She pointed to the screen. In the photo from 2 days before, it's pristine. But afterward there are precise cuts along the bottom edge. Cuts that match exactly the damage pattern on 16 other items. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my heart was pounding. That's weird, I managed. It gets better, Emma said, clicking to the next slide. She'd created an entire presentation. I also remembered that our security system logs when doors and windows are opened. I had Dad show me how to check the logs. Oh shit. I'd completely forgotten about the security system. According to the system, the front door was unlocked from the inside at 7:42 a.m. on May 15th, 23 minutes after I left for practice. It was locked again at 8:31 a.m., 8 minutes before I got home. She smiled coldly. Mom was already at work and Dad doesn't get up until 9 a.m. So who unlocked that door? I was trapped, but I couldn't give up now. Maybe the system glitched? Maybe, Emma agreed. But probably not. Especially combined with this. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was a close-up of her desk area, showing a small pile of what looked like tiny paper fragments and metal shavings. And I promised to talk to them when I was feeling overlooked instead of lashing out destructively. But the story doesn't end there. The next few months were actually really good. Our parents made a genuine effort to rebalance their attention. They came to my basketball games, celebrated when I made honor roll, asked about my college plans, and made sure Emma's achievements didn't overshadow mine. Emma started deflecting some of the praise she received and redirecting attention to things I was doing. She even helped me study for my SATs without making it seem like charity work. I thought we had fixed everything. I thought the revenge I'd taken had actually made our family stronger. I was wrong. The real consequences of what I'd done didn't become clear until Emma's senior year, when she was applying to colleges. She had been accepted early admission to Harvard as expected. But she'd also applied to several other prestigious schools, Stanford, MIT, Yale, just to see what kind of offers she could get. The problem was that several of those applications required her to submit photos and documentation of her major achievements. Awards, trophies, certificates, the kind of portfolio that someone with Emma's track record would be expected to have. But now her portfolio looked questionable. The damaged certificates looked unprofessional. The scratched medals looked like she hadn't taken care of her awards properly. And while she'd tried to repair what she could, the damage I'd done was permanent and noticeable. Worse, when the admissions committees asked about the condition of her awards during interviews, Emma was faced with an impossible choice. Tell them her jealous sister had vandalized them, which would make her sound petty and our family sound dysfunctional, or try to explain the damage in some other way, which would make her sound careless or dishonest. She chose to say that some of her awards had been damaged in a household accident, and that she'd learned from the experience that achievements were about more than physical objects. It was a good recovery, but it raised questions about her attention to detail and care for important things. Stanford rejected her. So did MIT. Yale waitlisted her, then ultimately rejected her too. Emma still had Harvard, of course. But for someone who had never failed at anything, being rejected by schools she was overqualified for was devastating. She became convinced that my sabotage had cost her opportunities she deserved. And she wasn't wrong. The worst part was watching how this affected her mental health. Emma, who had always been confident and composed, became anxious and second-guessing herself. She started seeing the college rejections as proof that she wasn't as perfect as she'd thought, that maybe all her achievements were meaningless if they could be undermined so easily. She developed what could only be described as obsessive-compulsive tendencies around her remaining awards and achievements. She would check and recheck them multiple times a day, take pictures to document their condition, and became paranoid about anyone being in her room. Our parents were worried enough to insist she see a therapist. The therapist diagnosed her with anxiety and perfectionism-related OCD triggered by the violation of her personal space and achievements. I felt horrible. I had wanted to hurt Emma, but I hadn't wanted to genuinely damage her mental health or cost her college acceptances. I had wanted to knock her down a peg, not destroy her confidence entirely. I tried to apologize again, more fully this time. I offered to write letters to the colleges explaining what had really happened, to take full responsibility for the damage. But Emma refused. "It won't change anything," she said. "And it would just make our whole family look dysfunctional. I don't want admissions committees thinking about our family drama." She was probably right, but it meant she had to carry the consequences of my actions alone. Emma went to Harvard and did well, but she was never quite the same. She became more guarded, less trusting, less willing to let people into her personal space. She developed a habit of photographing her belongings obsessively and kept detailed inventories of her possessions. She also became hypervigilant about competition and perceived threats from others. She had trouble maintaining friendships because she would interpret normal competitive behavior as personal attacks. She dropped out of several activities because she couldn't handle the stress of worrying that someone might sabotage her. The girl who had once been effortlessly perfect became someone who worked twice as hard to achieve the same results, simply because she could no longer trust that her achievements were safe from interference. And our relationship never fully recovered. Emma forgave me intellectually, but she never trusted me again. She started locking her door, hiding important things from me, and keeping me at arm's length emotionally. The sister who had once offered to help me with everything now barely shared details of her life with me. Our family dinners became stilted and careful. Emma would share surface-level updates about school and activities, but never anything personal or vulnerable. She was polite to me but distant. It was like living with a friendly acquaintance rather than a sister. Our parents tried family therapy, but Emma refused to engage meaningfully. She would attend sessions and answer questions, but she kept her responses superficial and deflected attempts to explore deeper emotions. "I'm fine," she would say. "I've moved past it. I don't want to keep rehashing the past." But she wasn't fine, and we all knew it. The final blow came during Emma's sophomore year at Harvard. She had been working on a major research project, something that could potentially be published and would look incredible on graduate school applications. She'd been working on it for months, keeping all her notes and data meticulously organized in her dorm room. One night, her roommate's boyfriend apparently got drunk and accidentally knocked over Emma's desk, spilling coffee on some of her research materials and scattering her organized files. It was a genuine accident. The guy was mortified and tried to help clean up and reorganize everything. Emma's roommate was apologetic and offered to help restore whatever had been damaged. But Emma had a complete breakdown. She became convinced that the roommate had deliberately sabotaged her project. She accused them of conspiracy, filed formal complaints with the university housing office, and demanded to be moved to a single room immediately. The incident report described Emma as paranoid and hostile, and unable to accept that the damage was accidental. Her roommate requested a transfer, citing Emma's unstable behavior and baseless accusations. Emma was required to meet with a counselor, who noted that she showed signs of trauma-related hypervigilance and trust issues stemming from past experiences of betrayal. Reading that report, Emma showed it to our parents during winter break, was like being punched in the gut. I realized that what I had done to her when she was 16 hadn't just hurt her in the moment, it had fundamentally changed how she processed and responded to conflict for the rest of her life. My harmless revenge had taught Emma that people she trusted could and would betray her when she was vulnerable. It had taught her that her achievements could be destroyed by people who were jealous of her success. It had taught her to be constantly vigilant and suspicious of others' motives. I had wanted to hurt the perfect golden child. Instead, I had damaged a human being. Emma graduated from Harvard with honors and got into medical school, as expected. But she chose a school across the country, and after she moved, she rarely came home. Our relationship became limited to polite text messages on birthdays and holidays. She's in her residency now. From what our parents tell me, she's doing well professionally but struggles with interpersonal relationships. She's never had a serious boyfriend, has trouble maintaining close friendships, and tends to isolate herself when stressed. Our parents blame themselves for the family dynamics that led to my actions. I blame myself for taking things too far. Emma doesn't blame anyone, she just moved on with her life, but with permanent walls up that keep everyone at a distance. The saddest part is that the conversation we had after I was caught, the one where our family finally talked honestly about attention and favoritism and feeling invisible, actually did help. Our parents did change their behavior. I did start feeling more seen and valued. Emma and I did develop a better understanding of each other's perspectives. But all of that came at the cost of Emma's ability to trust people completely, and it came too late to prevent the damage I'd done to her sense of security and safety. If I could go back, would I do things differently? Honestly, I don't know. The family changes that resulted from my actions were positive. I needed my parents to see that their favoritism was hurting me, and Emma needed to understand how her perfection was casting a shadow over my life. But I wish I had found a way to address those issues without betraying Emma's trust and damaging her mental health. I wish I had been brave enough to have the conversation we ultimately had without first taking revenge that would haunt her for years. Some of you will probably say I deserve to feel guilty, that I should have known better, that I was old enough to find a better way to handle my jealousy. You're probably right. Others might say that Emma was privileged and spoiled, and that learning to deal with adversity was good for her character. You might be right too. But regardless of who was right or wrong, the consequences of my actions extended far beyond what I intended. I wanted to hurt Emma for a few days or weeks. Instead, I changed her fundamental ability to trust people for what might be the rest of her life. That's the thing about revenge, even harmless revenge. You never know what the full consequences will be. You never know how far the ripples will spread, or how long they'll last, or who else they'll affect. Emma was perfect, but she was also just a teenager who had worked hard for achievements that mattered to her. Taking those achievements away from her didn't make me more successful or happier or more noticed by our parents. It just taught me that I was capable of cruelty when I felt small. And it taught Emma that even people who love you will hurt you if you make them feel inferior. Neither of those are lessons I'm proud of learning or teaching. Update 6 months later. A lot of people have been messaging me asking for updates, especially after I mentioned in some comments that Emma and I have been texting more lately. First, thank you to everyone who shared their own stories about sibling rivalry, family favoritism, and revenge that went too far. It helped me feel less alone in having done something I deeply regret. Second, I want to address some of the criticism I got. Yes, I know what I did was terrible. Yes, I know Emma didn't deserve it. Yes, I know I was old enough to know better. I'm not looking for validation or excuses. I'm sharing this story as a cautionary tale about how seemingly small acts of revenge can have lasting consequences. As for the update, Emma reached out to me about 3 months ago. Not for reconciliation exactly, but because she needed my help with something. She's been working with her therapist on her trust issues and anxiety, and apparently part of her treatment involves confronting the source of her trauma. Her therapist suggested that she might benefit from having a conversation with me about what happened and how it affected her. Emma asked if I would be willing to participate in a session with her and her therapist via video call. She made it clear that this was for her healing process, not about rebuilding our relationship, and that I was free to say no.